Diana, welcome to the Adriana Ostapenko Podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you. You and I are good friends. You're also a really awesome full-time real estate business professional. I know you run different types of business models within the real estate industry. You also bring so much value to the community. So I'm so glad to have you here. Welcome.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to for you to have me on. But just so everyone knows me, I always say I'm mainly a private lender, and I also do actively work on flips and BRRRs. And the only reason why I say I'm mainly a private lender is just because I do a lot more deals in the year on private lending than I do on flips, just because when you get to see how amazing, like you get to see all the deals and you get to really cherry pick all the great deals when it comes to private lending. Whereas on the flip side, on the flipping or the BRRRring side, it takes time to find them, and there's so many people grabbing amazing deals and I'm personally very conservative and super picky about my deals, so I don't like to rush myself into those deals. And just for everyone else to know, it's also the reason why I even do private lending on flips and BRRRs is because me and my husband own a renovation business, and that just gave me a really easy in because I helped him run the business. And so I know really well how to quote deals. And if someone brings me a deal, either for me to take on or to private lend, I can just easily assess if it's a good deal or not.
I love that. And private lending, I know you just shared, that's like you do a lot of private lending deals, but also you do a lot of other things too. Just in terms of the private lending side, since we're just there, what do you look for in a private lending deal? What makes you think and pick that one to be your chosen project?
The reason I love private lending, actually there's so many different reasons why I love private lending. One, you get to learn how other people think. So it kind of also gives you insight on how they run their numbers and if I like the way they run their numbers. So that's like one thing you kind of like see. To be honest, you do see, like, to say their personality of how they are. Like, are they super bold? Are they like super conservative? Are they super creative? There's just so many things you can see from how they show you how they run the numbers and just asking them the questions. Like 2 years ago, everything was like 12-month terms, big projects, big flip. And then we go to last year where everything flipped and everything went to very short term, like very quick 1 month, 2 months max type of renovations. The terms were 6 months. Everything was a BRRRR, just quick in and out, get it up to par what they needed to and get it tenanted out, and just get rid of that private lend and go to an A lender. So I also like it for that sense because you do get insights into what's going on. Because, when, for example, with me, when I'm on, for example, like let's say doing a flip, like in one time I was in the middle of doing a flip in Toronto, I can't say I know what's going on everywhere else because my focus is on that specific flip. But with these private lends, it helps me because I'm like, oh, okay, one here, maybe one in Ottawa, another one in like Hamilton, one in Niagara. So it's just like, it makes me kind of also help me to stay up to date, like what's going on in the cities, like what's happening there, and just like that, make decisions on even future things for me, like what I want to do.
Is there a specific like loan to value that you go to on a private lending deal?
Like I would say loan to purchase. That's a hard question because I always say I'm willing to go up to 100% to the purchase price, but it has to be like a great deal, right? Like I can tell you specifically one of my deals where I got 100% on mine. It was a flip and I was looking for private money and I got 100% of it was because I had to negotiate the price, and it ended up being, the purchase price ended up being under 80% loan to the value of the appraisal, right? So for me, it's like that, how good is the deal? Like how good are you negotiating the deals? What are you able to get done? And I'm definitely willing to work with them, right? Like that, like if I find someone that's amazing at doing certain things, like why wouldn't I do 100% to the purchase price, and because those people are, for example, like they're very good negotiators, right? They're very good at getting like the deals, or they understand how to run the numbers. The running the numbers is very, very important, right? And it's like, if you can see how it's going to work, you can see that they're properly funded, you know, that the plans are there. And like that, like I would say, for example, that don't get, like, let's say right now in the environment we're in, things are changing. But for example, like that, if you see how the people are, let's say, taking into consideration what's happening with the current market, and then they're still finding good deals, and you can see how it still works. I'm personally willing to do up to 100% of the purchase price if the borrower can show that it's a really amazing deal.
Do you ever do financing on the construction side as well, or do you always keep it to the mortgage?
I'm all mortgages, yeah. Construction scares me. And even, for example, like I can tell you the changes that I've seen happen. 2 years ago, I used to do seconds. All of last year, I was removing all my seconds. Any seconds that came back, the term was ending. I was like, figure it out, get it out. Figure it out, get it out. I want it back, right? And then, for example, now I'm doing a lot less, obviously, because now I'm having to do bigger deals because now I'm going into first mortgages, right? But so that shows like what I'm seeing in the market, or what my predictions of the market are, right? Like these kind of things. In my sense, I feel that just like we need to be very careful. And to be honest, as the borrowers, as the active investors, this is the time to be heavy on cash, actually, right? So I feel like if we're going into seconds or thirds, it's really like, again, there may be amazing deals that can do that. But again, it's like really looking at the numbers and making sure that it makes sense. Because right now, I think we're heading into an era that you want to be super cash heavy, and you want to make sure that you can actually run your projects with cash.
I love that. Is there a specific percentage of like a rate that you look for in your private lending deals?
Yeah, I would say they've gone up now a bit. You know, before it was, you know, that 8 to 10%, the interest rate. And then now it's around like 10 and 12% it's gone to.
And then plus lenders fees?
That really depends. To be honest, I actually don't really like doing lenders fees. Again, the kind of deals I look for, I feel like I will, let's say, not do a lender's fee. I mean, it's funny, I've had people, for example, pay me all the interest up front and everything. Like, they just didn't want to pay any monthly fees, and they gave me, like, the lender's fee was just like all the money up front, and then they just paid me out in the end, right? But so it depends on the person. But I will put it into the monthly instead. But that's because, again, I'm very picky about the kind of deals that I do, and I want it to be an amazing deal, but I also want to help the investors themselves too, right? Because I think, like, if you as an investor are really good at finding good deals, like, why not reward it with helping them with less upfront? Because the expenses upfront, I mean, I do the deals too, right? It's like very expensive, the upfront cost.
100%. So I'm just going to recap here from my understanding. So in terms of the deals itself, you've seen a shift in the market. So you're now focusing way more on first position mortgages versus the second positions that you were doing before. You do look for, I'm assuming, is it mostly residential? Do you do multifamily as well?
Majority are the small multis, I would say. I have done the bigger, like I think it was like a 20 unit one that I did in the past. But generally, I think it's just also the luck of the draw, right? That generally always just seem to get the smaller multis, and probably like that because, I mean, now going into multis now, and I'm only doing first, that's quite a bit of money I'd probably have to bring up front.
Yes, makes more sense. You can find a little easier in a smaller multi. And then do you focus on specific markets? Is there specific markets that you really zoomed in, or are you really open to look at any market?
I would say I'm sticking to Ontario. I'm probably a lot more focused now on the bigger cities. Before, I did go into the towns, and I didn't mind going into anything as long as it was 10,000 plus. I would say it was my bottom line, no more, no less than that. Whereas now it's gone to, I just want to stay in the big cities because I just think we're going to see the biggest drops happening is in the smaller towns. Again, my predictions. But this is what I feel that I feel that there's less stability in the smaller towns, and the bigger cities will be able to stabilize in where we're heading into.
Makes more sense. It makes a ton of sense. So from choosing bigger markets, focusing on Ontario, which is your hometown, that's where you know valuations, the general trends in the markets, to first positions, and then a bit of a higher interest because that is the conditions of the market right now. Some of the things you focus on, I know there's a lot of private lending deals that fell through, unfortunately, the last couple of years, as people got the last 6 months, I guess, as people got hit with the change in interest rates, the cost of construction, refinance not coming back as high as somebody expected to, and then you're really looking for the massive valuation increase through construction, if that's a BRRRR or if that's a flip that's going to allow you to pull that money out afterwards. Does that sound about right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, so looking like that, looking at what happened last year, we saw interest rates go up a lot. A lot of people say that we did see, let's say, the markets go down a lot last year, but to be honest, not as much as it should have gone. And even a very simple example is, for example, I was doing a flip last year, and when I was comparing the numbers from the year before to last year to figure out what the sale price would be, I can tell you that from the year before to last year, the numbers were still higher actually. And so that was one thing that was just kind of telling to me that specifically on the residential side, we're not seeing enough of a drop happening last year. And even now, I don't feel like we've seen enough of a drop. They say, for example, unemployment is still low. It actually went down even more. So I don't think, for example, interest rates, I kind of don't feel that they're going to put the interest rates up in this next one. But I do feel that they may have to maybe closer to the end of the year if things don't change. So I feel, for example, that at the end of this year, we're going to see things drop some more. And probably I feel like the biggest, to say, devastations will probably happen is more next year. And the reason I say that is because one thing that I thought was a huge learning curve for me was I expected things to change a lot quicker. And the fact that last year, I understand that like a lot of people went through turmoils of all the things that were happening, but with respect to the interest rates and how much they increased and how they didn't decrease the prices fast enough or soon enough. I was thinking, fine, usually they say in the real estate market, it's about a 3-month turnaround with changes, but I can't really say that the turnaround were big enough, and then I was like, okay, maybe it's 6 months, and then I was like, okay, finally, we're starting to see a little bit heat now, but again, not enough. And I think it's going to be probably closer to the end of this year, the end of this year. I mean, that's like a hope. Like, I'm like, because I know it has to happen because the government needs, it's sad to say, but the government needs people to lose their jobs. And when people lose their jobs, we're going to be having issues with, lots of evictions happening and lots of people having to lose their houses because they can't pay the bills.
So let me recap again. Your predictions are that, the market is still going to continue to decline. So residential market valuations will continue to decline. Interest rates may not go up this quarter, but probably continue to go up still towards the end of this year, maybe into next year. Inflation will continue to rise, so costs will become even more expensive. This has gonna have ripple effect in people getting laid off, not being able to afford their rents, not being able to afford their homes anymore, mortgage payments. So the situation will continue to get worse before it gets better towards the end of this year, beginning of next year, and then we'll see what happens from there. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about the tenant situation, because you were just talking about the changes you have seen, and I have a couple of thoughts around that too with my own properties, but some of the changes you've seen from last year to this year when it comes to tenanting units.
Well, I would say like even starting with tenanted units, like that, like the reasons why my tenants are leaving are because they're struggling with their bills. But one of the things that I found very interesting in all these units, because I have 3 of them vacating right now within these next couple months, is I found it very interesting how it was all partner split up. And so to me, I found that very interesting because I think like that, the financial strains, either not having a job, not making enough money, is really affecting families a lot right now, and it's causing people to split. And then so that these actually happen to be all 3 of them where all these things happening issues. It was like partners left, and then either they left and then financial strain happened, or they left because of financial strain and like the stresses of like having to deal with.
I so agree with that. I had a similar situation happen just recently with one of our units. This older gentleman lost his job. He didn't pay, for the first time, he didn't pay rent in January. So I reached out to him and we had a conversation. He explained to me that he had lost his job and unfortunately was not able to afford the rent. Tried to have a conversation with him in regards to his prospects of getting another job. What did he want to do? He said he just wanted to leave because he didn't think he could afford. I told him, you know what, this was maybe first week of January. I said, here's what we can do. Well, how about I'll apply your last rent deposit to your February so that you're covered until then. As long as you agree to move out by the end of February, you have the rest of January and you have the month of February to stay within the units. As long as we're in agreement that you're moving out, then we don't have to go through any legal process. I'm not going to back charge you for any bills. We had a great conversation. He's agreed to it. So I just followed up with him because, as you know, it's beginning of March. Just followed up with him last Friday. He said, I'm ready to go. I'm all packed up. I cleaned the unit. I left it in incredible condition. And he's like, I just want somebody to come in, inspect, make sure it's all good, to hand the key. I told him, and this was Friday, so I told him, you know what, why don't we do that on Monday so you have the weekend to be there. He was so thankful and was just saying to me, you're an amazing landlord. I don't have this interaction very often. So I so agree with you. Tenants are people, just like landlords are too, and be able to have a conversation like that with honesty, transparency, working together to solve whatever situation's at hand, very often, in my experience, generates the outcome that you're looking for versus, going into battleground with them, because nobody has that intention usually.
And then, so I want to get onto another example, which we are going through an eviction process, but it seems like now they will be leaving by the end of this month. But, and this is to talk about how to screen your tenants, because I think now is a very important time to really be picky. And I think a lot of people are already, but just making sure that you're really looking for the right kind of tenants, because we had another unit that is hopefully by the end of this month, supposed to be in the end of this week or next week, but this person hasn't been paying for 4 or 5 months now. They were a friend of ours, and specifically a friend of my husband, but I knew him enough that I knew he didn't meet the criteria. But you get the guilt trips from, I would get them from my husband, and the vouch, he'll vouch for them. And let me tell you, this person was in there with his family 4 or 5 years before this happened. But the problem is, I feel like when you look at, I think the credit report, checking everything is important, but I think, to be honest, the credit report is the most important, is a very important, the number, I would say number 1, because that, I never got to see this guy's information, but I knew already what it was because I kind of knew about his background and what happened, the things that had happened. So I knew his credit report wasn't good because he worked everything in cash. And but when you look at people's credit reports, if they are not having the credit report at, let's say, 650 or higher, that usually says that doesn't mean these people are bad people, because, for example, this guy's not a bad person, but I can definitely tell you, when it comes to a time when things are struggling like that, he lost his job, no money, His wife left him with his kids, so he's on his own. You think that he's going to be thinking about money? His credit report sucks. He doesn't care, right? And all he's thinking, and all like his mind is just blocked on his family, figuring out what to do, how to deal with all the stresses. And so that one, we're going through an eviction right now. Hopefully he leaves by the end of this month. But I think, again, the reason why this one didn't go well was because he did not meet the criteria at all. And I knew that he wouldn't meet the criteria. And I think right now is a very important time to be making sure you understand the criteria. And it, to be honest, is changing, in my opinion. Like, there's certain jobs that I probably won't even accept as people to be tenanted because of the expectation that the government needs more jobs to be lost right now.
So what are some specific jobs that you're staying away from or moving towards?
I feel like always, this one I feel like is always retail, restaurants. Never had any interest in that already to begin with. I think the very, very interesting ones that we do want to pay attention to is government jobs. They're going to be amazing. Right now they're hiring a lot as we saw in COVID, there was a mass hiring happening during COVID. So when we're in times of turmoil, governments bulk up like crazy. So government jobs are really good in that sense because they need it, right? Because they're there to console everyone and figure out solutions during this process. For example, right now, CRAs on mass hire, I think they probably have already hired a lot because now they're trying to figure out how to get their money back of all the money they spend, right? So government jobs, I think, are something that really interests me. And also long-term employees. So I feel like even if someone has a job that's within a year, I won't be taking anything like that. If they survived COVID, I would love those kind of jobs, people with those kind of jobs.
It's very true. Yeah. I love that. I think there's some solid tips there. One is with the credit reports. To me, if somebody has a bad credit, that signals lack of financial literacy or financial responsibility. That's one of the two. And it could be either, it could be both, but really, and then and I have rented to people that have had lower credit scores. I agree with you. I am becoming a bit more strict this time around, but I also dove into what the reasons were. It happens that if you're going through a divorce, where your credit score gets impacted. And it happens that there's specific or particular situations, but most often it will signal one of those two things, and which are red flags, right? Are you actually going to be financially responsible for your commitments? And it can signal that they will not be, which is an issue. The other thing I look for in the credits is how much debt is this person carrying, because that makes a difference. If you have, dozens of thousands of dollars in credit cards, amount of credits debt, it's just way too much debt for you to service, for you to keep up with your regular bills. Yeah. So definitely really good points. I also agree with you with the new tenants. I do like double income. The last two tenants that had left were single income, unfortunately, and they just, if something happens to their job, there's nobody else. So looking for dual income helps to make sure that the person can continue, even if that's roommates or something, not as ideal, but at least there's two incomes within the units. And then stability of job. I also like people that have been in their jobs for at least 18 months and that are, on the longer path with their jobs and experience and such. So really good tips. I wanted to dive into flips for a minute because I know you've told me that you have just acquired a new flip project. I'm partially surprised and I don't do flips myself. So probably part of the reason why I'm surprised, but also most of the real estate investors that I talk to that had gotten themselves in some hard times, this past 6 months or so, were people that were doing flips. So I'm curious, obviously you're very experienced at doing this. I don't know if you can share how many flips you've done, but I know it's been quite a few. What makes you so confident to pick up a flip during this, economic time?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, that you're saying about, for example, there have been a lot of people going through hard times with flips. But imagine, like, in the hard times of last year, I flipped and made very good profits last year, right? And I can tell you again, like, so one of the good things that I find as real estate investors, and if we're doing our jobs properly as real estate investing, is we do have this ability to predict what is happening within the next 3 months. Like, you see things happening with about a window of 3 months. And so being up to date with the news and everything is so important, because you do get that ability to kind of have that foresight, because like I was saying before, right? Like I was ready to adapt and change to these interest rates, but the residential market wasn't. They were, and I was thinking that they would start adapting, and then like that. I mean, they did adapt like 3 months, but not as much as I expected, right? But for example, there's still changes happening now, and now we're going to be hitting almost a year. Right? And we're still in the process of making changes. So like that, let's say right now with the flips, yeah, my hope is that it flips, but I can tell you that I've ran the numbers to make sure that I can hold it and keep it as a BRRRR if that's what happens, right? So right now, like that, like this multiple exit strategies is something that is a must for everyone. You have to. It's not like, again, like 2 years ago where you could just flip and it didn't matter. Like 2 years ago, we did a luxury flip. If we got stuck with a luxury flip, that would have been a disaster because it's not a duplex. If we wouldn't have covered our expenses.
I love that. I so agree with you about having multiple exit strategies. Also want to dive into the whole positivity versus real, looking down. Because I consider myself a very positive person. I mean, I consider you a very positive person. We know each other well. So I guess to me, being positive doesn't mean that you're not looking at the situation as is, because that's not the case. I'm the person that sort of controls the budget within the business. I'm always like, because I speak for the investors, I'm the one that raises a lot of capital for our deals. So I speak for them, and I'm the one that's looking at things and being like, hold on, no, we cannot afford. And this was a conversation we had earlier today. Tuesdays is our project management day. So I have back-to-back calls with the construction team. We're finalizing one BRRRR in one of our properties. And then we are in the midst of our large 50 units repurposing project. So I'm the one that's on the call being like, this is the budget, what's the timeline, what's the carrying cost, if we're increasing, who's going to pay for that, how can we adjust things, what do we need to look at. That's my responsibility to make sure that our investors, that I'm speaking for them and they're protected, crying out for their best interest, because that is my job. So I'm very positive, but I'm very positively understanding of the factors. I'm also very conservative in nature myself, and I don't work with high debts. I don't work with a lot of like high interest. I don't do a lot of those, and we have in the past only when I had way more confidence in what we could do, and we managed that risk really well. But I think to me, the positivity goes into entering any situation knowing very well that there is a solution. The solution is not ignoring the situation. The solution is actually understanding the situation as well as you possibly can. All the factors, all the multiple exit strategies, all the timelines, all the potential solutions, and potentially pitfalls as well. And being able to either walk away or retrieve anything that you think could have gone, in a bad direction. So to me, that's what being positive is.
Yeah, definitely being able to handle in a positive way, let's say a negative situation, is also very important. And another thing that I just wanted to make sure was that, like when I talk about rational thinking, is also about like the numbers, which to me has nothing to do with positive or negative. It's like the rational side, like you have to do your numbers. You can't just because I've seen people do this where they buy a property and they just think that their positive mind will make it happen, and then they've lost money because they weren't paying attention to the market. They weren't running their numbers, like these kind of things. Like I've heard people do this, and like that specific company that went bankrupt was a lot had to do with just not realizing that you still have to do your job, you know? Like, besides being positive, like whatever your role is in it, like that, if you're not the numbers person, you need a numbers person. Very important, making sure that everything is afloat, you know?
So true. And I say this to people, what we do as real estate investors, we're in the financial industry here. Like, we're dealing with investments, right? So it is a numbers game. It is a numbers-driven business. We need to know where we're at, what we're going into. And there is projections and trends and risks that, you know, and where I go into it, and if you've seen any of my investor packages, and I don't know how many people do it that way, but we give you a range because I'm like, we are making assumptions, and also make very clear, these are the assumptions we're making. We're making assumptions on interest rates. We're making assumptions on cap rates. We're making assumptions on like passive appreciation. We make assumptions to be able to run our numbers. I want you to feel comfortable knowing what those assumptions are and knowing that there's a range here that we're probably going to fall somewhere in between there. If you're comfortable on the lower side of the range, then you'll be happy once we outperform that, which we have every time so far. But you just don't know where we came in short last year. Not short, but like where we were hit last year was in refinances, like most people, because ultimately debt service ratio, you know, just got impacted by interest rates. We weren't able to pull out as much as we could from a BRRRR project that we were planning to, but that was in the projections. That was in the ranges when we first offered the investment option to investors and say, hey, these are the ranges that we're potentially looking at here based on these assumptions. So we want you to feel comfortable that we're going to fall somewhere in between there. And there's things that are outside of our control. But like, this is how I like to run numbers, because I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. Like, nobody really knows fully 100% what's going to happen down the road. And then we have a plan B and plan C. Like, I don't do anything without having a couple of other options in place for the same reason. If this first option doesn't go as well as we expect it to, do we have a plan B here to hold us over? Because we don't want to lose money. That's the last thing we want to do. It's just, again, investment options here. We're supposed to be making money. Losing money is not really an option in my books. So what is a plan B? At the very least, we're going to hold on. And until the market comes back around, at the very least, we're going to hold on and make the cash flow. At the very least, we're going to hold on and get principal recapture. So what does that look like for us? And then we also, and this is just me, as I just said earlier, I don't do flips myself, although I've done many BRRRs. I like the long term because it's forgiving. So, you know, I will run every project on a 5-year basis and say, hey, we have 5 years here to consider all these different trends in the market and considerations and see if it still looks like a really positive project at the end of the day.
100%. Yeah. Especially you deal with big multis. So I feel like it is a 5-year term itself to even just
it's gonna be, this is my, I process it. It's at least 5 years. That's all we can like come into it for a long-term hold, because that makes a difference. But even in our smaller BRRRs, small multi-BRRRs, we also went in mind with a 5-year term, and it's been forgiving because if we weren't able to pull everything out on the first year, we certainly were able to pull the rest of it on the second year or third year. And it just allows us to, you know, continue to experience the benefits of it. And so this is so fun. I also want to dive in your education networking side. I know you have I actually want to know more about it. I was just telling you, I see behind you it says mastermind. So tell me a little bit more about what you have going on with your mastermind.
Yeah, each month I have a mastermind. Actually, the next one is actually tomorrow. And basically we pick a topic for the day for that month. And let's say tomorrow it's on like the rental game in Ontario. I find that very, very important right now, like as I was talking about. And I personally like it. It's a lot of fun. A lot of people tell me it's very different to what others do, because what we do is we have one hour speaking segment, and then afterwards we do one-on-one breakouts with all attendees and all the speakers, and it's 5 minutes. And then so we just go through as many connections as we can to meet people, which is a lot of fun because you get to meet people. So we have the networking events, and then something that's coming up actually pretty soon is I'm actually creating a social networking platform for real estate investors. And so this is to help for example, new real estate investors or people that want to start showing credibility within themselves by being able to share their projects. And so the social networking platform is also to help real estate investors be able to have their own profiles that are specific for real estate investors. So you can actually share more real estate investor type information. Whereas like in Facebook, it's a lot harder. It's very, it's just Facebook. It's a different type of, or even like LinkedIn, it's more of like a resume. So this is more for real estate investors. And same thing, if it's real estate professionals, they will also be able to have their own profiles. And if you're a mentor, same thing, you'll have your own type of profile. And so the purpose is to basically have a place where everyone can go to, everyone can connect. And like that, if you want to share your projects, we'll be calling them like trusted projects. And what will happen is they get verified. And so you check that what you're saying, what it is, gets put on with, what actually happened to that project and how it was run and if it made sense. And so then it becomes identified as a trusted project. So even if you as an investor are, let's say, either looking to just build credibility, that helps because you have your trusted project. So people can look at it and be like, believe that those are real numbers they're looking at. And then they'll also be able to share their learning experiences too. So we'll have a section in there for, like problems they encountered, and like how they solve them. Because I feel like that just builds the character of the person too, right? Like how you dealt with the project, how it ran, like your learning experiences from it.
I love that. When you say social network, I think Facebook, does it look anything like Facebook?
It's like exactly like Facebook.
And who's gonna have access to it?
Pardon?
Who's gonna have access to it?
Everyone can have access, and it'll be different levels of memberships like that, because I want everyone to be able to join. So there's like a first level membership where it's free for anyone to join in. But then like that, if you want to start, if you're a more serious real estate investor, then you'll pay the membership for for example, to be a real estate investor. There's a membership for the mentor. There's a membership because those are completely different profiles and we'll be catering to different types of things that they can do. But it looks exactly like Facebook, like that mentors can create their own Facebook group. Facebook groups, so it'd be like groups in there so that if they have their members, they can have their own little Facebook group that they can use to communicate with them. And then they can even have public groups where maybe you just want to have, there's lots of, for example, women groups out there and they put them and they want it to be public for everyone and anyone can join. But then you can also have private ones that maybe like exclusive VIP member type deals, right? So it's like exactly like Facebook, but now catered for real estate investors. So you can even do.
If you need some help with beta testing, feel free to let me know. I'll volunteer to be part of it.
Awesome. I'll definitely take you up on that offer. As many people that want to help with the beta testing, because like that, this is meant for everyone, right? And I want it to be a good platform that everyone can use, that is useful for everyone, that has, what people are looking for, what they need.
I love that. This has been awesome. I can't believe time just flew by. How can people get a hold of you?
So you can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook, and everywhere I'm InvestorGirlDiana. And then also I do have a Facebook group and it's called the Real Estate Investing District. And then if you want to get on my website, because my website also has everything linked in, it's my name, so dianalizarazo.ca.
That's amazing. I love it. Go follow Diana. She has such an incredible amount of information, education, inspiration out there she puts out to the community. Thank you so much for joining me. This episode will be coming out soon. This is Adriana Ostapenko at the Adriana Ostapenko Podcast. We'll see you all very shortly.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Bye, everyone.
Bye.